Good morning. Can everyone hear me? Let's start with that. Great. First question I want to ask is, how many people own firms or work for firms that have more than 50 employees, other than the carriers? I saw that. Was that a couple of hands? Okay, so a lot of today will be both for those employers with less than 50 and those with more. As Wendy said, I'm going to start off for about 8 minutes, and I'll start my timer now, talking on a very high level. Then Roger's going to come in with some specifics, focusing on the tax issues, and then I'll come back with some more things that as employers, regardless of your size, you just need to be aware of. Let me start off by saying that there are probably as many opinions about the ACA as there are people in this room, and in fact as there are people in the state of Maine. We're not here today to debate whether it's good or bad, what works and what doesn't work. We're here to give you the information you need to deal with the situation as is. So I like to kind of start that off, and I'll add to that and say, I'll answer any question you have except why. The whys we'll leave for another conversation. So with that in mind, what is the ACA? At a very high level, it, contrary to some people's opinions, it attempts to take the existing healthcare system and enhance it in order to make coverage more affordable for both individuals and small businesses. The way it was designed to do that was by enhancing both sides of our current system, the public side and the private side. On the private side, it does that through tax credits for small businesses, through the creation of the shop. For individuals, the presence of advanced premium tax credits, which we'll talk about a little bit, insurance reform, and so forth. On the public side, it was supposed to change Medicaid, or as we call it, Maine Care, make that qualification level consistent across the country. But because of the Supreme Court decision, as you may recall, that is a state option. So that has not happened here in Maine. We'll see what happens in November to see if that changes or not. But that means that there is a gap. So there are going to be some people who are not going to be helped by the law because of the state decision. So I just want to make sure everyone keeps that in the back of their mind. I'd like to start with this quote because one of the critiques of the law is, why is it so complicated? It's complicated because healthcare makes up almost 1/5 of our gross domestic expense in this country. I used to say 1/7, but now we're getting really close to 1/5, to 20% of every dollar spent. By trying to work within the existing system, instead of kicking everything out and starting from scratch, it introduces complications. I won't read this quote for you, but it's here, you have it in your slides, and it really just hits home that point that if you're trying to build on top of something that's already complex, it's going to get more complex. And you'll understand the reason for this warning as we go through the material today. So, employers, this is what we're going to focus on mostly. How are you affected? One of the things that people talk about is the individual mandate and the employer mandate. So here's what's going on with the employer mandate, because there have been some changes over the past year in the schedule. For 2014, no employer was responsible for making any changes or doing anything different. In 2015, employers with 100 or more FTEs need to make coverage available to 75% of their employees.
70 or 75?
70, I'm sorry, thank you. I'll turn a little more so I can make sure I get my numbers right. The reason I mention that percentage, the law itself talks about offering to 95%, but that 70% is a transitional number for that first year. For firms between 50 and 99, there are no requirements in 2015. That was delayed again to 2016. In 2016, all employers with 50 or more full-time equivalents, and we can talk later about what that really means, are responsible for offering coverage to 95% of their full-time employees. There are also some additional rules that we haven't seen the final regulations having to do with auto-enrollment for firms with 200 or more employees. I think we can put that aside for today's audience, but know that there are some other pieces out there. One other piece that's been somewhat delayed is the W-2 requirement for including your health benefit costs, and we'll discuss that as well. Plan reforms. For the first time, the federal government got involved in kind of setting a floor for what health insurance has to include, and this kind of lists them. There are many things on this list that were present in Maine before the law took place, so it actually did not represent a change for us. While people talk about Massachusetts being the model for some of the national pieces of the law, Maine also was really at the forefront of some of these reforms. I mentioned the marketplace or exchange or shop, so let's just be clear on what those terms mean. You'll hear the term exchange and marketplace. They are the same thing. It's a place to go and buy insurance. The shop is the marketplace for small businesses. And it's a place to go and compare plans on a side-by-side basis. But it has one other, or several other features, but one other crucial feature. As an individual, if you're going to qualify for individual tax credits, you have to purchase through the individual marketplace. As a small employer, if you want to qualify for your tax credits, you have to buy a plan through the shop. For individuals, there is an annual open enrollment period, something you would be familiar with because I'm sure many of you offer that to your employees, and that is also true on the individual market. For employers, though, your plan year can end at any time. So you are not restricted in terms of starting a new plan to any point in the year. But when you offer to your employees, again, you'll need to keep a single open enrollment period for your employees. I'm already at 2 minutes, so we'll keep moving forward. With the shop, again, some basic information. Any firm with less than 50 employees is eligible to use the shop this year. In 2016, that goes to for employers with less than 100 employees. Also, last year, the electronic enrollment on the shop was not functional. That's scheduled to begin on November 15th. But know that regardless of whether you do the electronic enrollment on the shop, you can buy a shop plan through your broker. We have the insurers here today. I saw on the list, I think there are some brokers in the room as well. They continue to be a key part of the system, and they are able to help you and have that win-win of you getting your shop plan and your tax credit, and they still receive their commission. So know that the shop does not exclude the presence of the broker or put them aside. I'll just mention this last point, sole proprietors, and this represents a change from the former law in Maine. Sole proprietors now go to the individual marketplace as opposed to buying a group plan. The small group definition begins at 2 now instead of 1. And I think we've gone through this just really quickly. Again, the direct enrollment should be available beginning in the middle of November. There were some questions as to whether that was going to be functional this year or not. It's actually being piloted now in 5 states. Maine is not one of those, but we're relatively optimistic that that will be functional this year. What insurers are taking place, and this is really a list for you to take with you, and you'll hear from many of these. Basically, in addition to last year, and that's telling me I'm already over time, in addition to last year's 2 carriers, Anthem and the Maine Community Health Options, Harvard Pilgrim has joined the marketplace, both on the individual and small group side. Anthem has come back into the individual marketplace, offering off-marketplace, they've come back into the market, not the marketplace. They're offering products off-marketplace for both individuals and small groups. And again, dental, lots of options, and we'll have one dental carrier on the panel to go into details. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Roger. I'm going to run back and change the slides, and he's going to go into some more detail, and then I'll be back again.